What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we got another update with Modern Warfare 3. This one was fairly small as far as the number of things that it fixed, but the fixes that came with this are fairly substantial. So we are still expecting that big update where it's going to have our first big round of weapon balancing and stuff. That didn't happen today, but it's nice to see they're releasing fixes as they come available. But before we get into the patch notes, they also gave us a sneak peek at the content we can expect to see for Season 1 of Modern Warfare 3, which is a little bit strange. This is a very early sneak peek, and they didn't even confirm like a launch date or anything. Like, we're not getting a full roadmap here. All they said is this is coming later in the year, presumably sometime probably like early December, and this is also going to be when they integrate into Warzone with the brand new Warzone map, and then all of the Modern Warfare 3 things are going to integrate into that. But when it comes to the multiplayer side of things, they showed off the 3 brand new maps that are going to be coming with Season 1. At launch, we're getting 2 brand new 6v6 maps. The first one is called Meat, and they just call this a compact map, whereas the second one is called Grease, and this is described as a medium-sized map, and it's a really nice-looking map, by the way. As for the mid-season update, we're going to be getting another brand new 6v6 map. This one's called Rio, and they just mentioned it's going to be colorful and have tight quarters. On top of this, for our sneak peek, they mentioned Gunfight will be returning, so 2v2 is coming with Season 1 in Modern Warfare 3, and they teased one brand new map we're going to be seeing with the Season 1 launch. This one's called Training Facility, and I love the look of this little map. It looks like on top of this brand new map, we are going to be getting some of the older maps for Gunfight coming back, so presumably some, if not all, of the Gunfight maps from Modern Warfare 2, and maybe even some from Modern Warfare 2019. So there we go, that's our little multiplayer sneak peek that we got for Season 1. Again, we don't even have an official date for this. Now let's get into the patch notes from today's update. And diving right in, they added the ability to preview weapon camos and aftermarket parts that are earned via weekly challenges. Additionally, the weekly challenges will now display the associated base weapon for aftermarket part rewards. For bug fixes, they address an issue that allowed players to select modes that are not supported in private matches. Another thing that I'm really happy to see, because this has annoyed me a little bit, is players will no longer be stuck in an activating token state after consuming an XP token. That has happened to me a few times since launch, and it is quite frustrating. And then on top of that, for bug fixes, there was an exploit that allowed players to equip aftermarket parts without meeting the minimum requirements for actually unlocking that. Now, moving on to the gameplay side of things, we got some movement adjustments here that I think a lot of players are going to be happy to see. The first thing I want to mention here is they decreased the sprint delay after sliding by 53%. This actually happened in the previous update, and I showed that to you guys. I showed you the side-by-side. We are back to the Weekend 2 beta values, which is also equal to the Modern Warfare 2019 values when it comes to that delay after a slide cancel where you can get back into a sprint. So that was the first thing that actually went through a day or two ago. The next thing they did in this most recent update is they decreased the tac sprint refresh delay after sliding by 75%. So previously, after a slide, if you immediately jump back into another slide, there wouldn't be any time for your tac sprint to regenerate even a little bit. You had to sort of pause for a little bit. You could regular sprint for a while, but if you initiated another slide too early, you wouldn't regenerate any of that tac sprint time, whereas many people expected that to be the case. And to top this off, they decreased the tac sprint refresh time to match the infantry vest and running sneakers by default. So once that tac sprint starts refreshing, it's going to be refreshing much faster now as well. So what this means is if you are chaining like slide cancels together, for instance, as long as you're leaving a little bit of time where you're sprinting in between those, and you're not just immediately going slide cancel, the slide cancel, the slide cancel, you should notice that your tac sprint is going to be available for much longer, and it will be regenerating in those brief moments between your slide cancels, much more like we saw in the beta build of the game. Many people thought this was a bug. I don't believe that was the case. Instead, I think we just don't have access to a stamina bar, and people weren't realizing that they had depleted their stamina and they weren't giving enough time for that stamina to start regenerating because they were slide canceling too often. So now you should be able to integrate more slide cancels in as long as you're still taking some pauses between those in order to regenerate some of that tactical sprint. So those are the movement changes, and definitely the biggest changes from this little update we got today. However, they also adjusted some progression items. They corrected attachment unlock requirements for several of the Modern Warfare 2 weapons. They also corrected an unlock challenge tracking condition for the barbecue operator. They addressed an issue that prevented the progression of the priceless camo for the DM58 marksman rifle. And most importantly in this section, your wins will now always count toward an armory unlock without having to complete all 3 of your daily challenges first. And I think this is great, because previously those wins didn't count for an armory unlock until all 3 of your daily challenges were completed. So if it took you a few games to get those done, and you were winning all of those games, well, too bad. You don't get any extra credit for those wins. You would only get credit for the wins after the challenges were completed. Whereas now, after this update, every single win that you get will count toward an Armory Unlock, even if you haven't done any of your daily challenges. After that, when it comes to the maps, they increase the brightness in low light areas on estates to improve player visibility. And on Underpass, apparently they fixed that spawn point where you would spawn inside a car and just die immediately, and that could happen over and over again. With this update, that should be fixed, and you should no longer be spawning inside that car. And then finally, for the multiplayer side of things, with the remote turret, they did address the exploit that allowed players to become invisible. I think it was something like if you placed a remote turret down and somehow took damage from your own remote turret, it would make you go invisible. So apparently they fixed that on the back end. However, they're still investigating reports of further exploits with it, so it's going to remain disabled as of now. And this is why at this point you still can't use the remote turret. They just want to make sure they've got this completely fixed before bringing it back to the game, which I think is a good thing. Obviously, an invisibility exploit is a huge deal in multiplayer, and we don't want that to be present. So I'd much rather not have the remote turret right now than have people running around invisible. So that's the multiplayer side of things. Now let's move on to the zombie side, and I'm not going to go into quite as many detail with all of the specific little bugs that you may or may not have experienced. I'm just going to go over the highlights on this. The first thing is they fixed exploits when it came to duplicating players' weapons, as well as, more importantly, score streaks. And this is a good thing for the overall stability of the game, because a lot of people were duplicating sentry turrets in zombies near the exfil zones, and this could actually cause the entire server to crash if they went a little too overboard with this. So I'm actually really happy to see that particular fix. Normally, I wouldn't care if somebody's duplicating their own things in zombies, because it's not like it affects me, but in this case, it did affect everybody on the server. On top of that, they reduced the number of zombies that spawn at the exfil locations to improve stability. And this one's a little bit unfortunate. If it's for the sake of stability, I get it, and that's a good thing. But I really do like the fact that you have those exfil locations where you just can get a ton of zombies spawning, because sometimes you want a lot of zombies to kill, especially for certain challenges. So I hope they didn't take this one too overboard. And then finally, for the highlights of the zombies mode, it should now be properly rewarding Battle Pass XP when you're playing zombies, which is excellent news, because up until now, I don't believe it's been awarding any XP toward your Battle Pass, and that obviously shouldn't have been the case. So there we go. That's going to wrap it up for the main highlights of today's update. Like I said, a fairly small update, but the changes that came with this one are quite noticeable. So it's great to see this update. I'm glad they're just sort of fixing things as they go instead of holding off for like weeks and weeks and weeks for one giant update. I'd rather they just fix things as those fixes become available. But of course, we are still waiting on a much bigger title update, which we'll probably get next week at some point, that's going to be containing a lot of weapon balancing and other changes and fixes to the game. And with that, I'm curious to hear what you guys think about these changes in those comments down below, especially in multiplayer, those movement changes. How are you feeling about them so far? Do you like the fact that our attack sprint is now going to regenerate significantly faster? Or did you kind of prefer how it was before, where you couldn't go overboard with slide cancels and attack sprint? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.